What is up YouTube? Kalebred here, bringing you a brand new video. Today we're going to talk about Seahorse Dads. In the trans community, Seahorse Dads are trans men who get pregnant and give birth. I am going to preface this video by saying that I am incredibly overprotective of Seahorse Dads. Not because I myself want to be one day, I'm super afraid of anything involving pregnancy. The idea of being pregnant myself makes me wildly dysphoric, and I just really enjoy that child-free lifestyle. But more the reason is because I feel like, other than trans women, Seahorse Dads are one of the most vulnerable groups in the trans community. I say this because I see their identities under attack by both cis and trans people. A lot of misinformed people center the idea of womanhood around the idea of having a womb and being able to utilize it. This alienates cis women who can't or don't want to give birth, trans men, and trans women. I've seen a lot of people ask,
well, if trans man real man, why give birth?
Or,
if not actually a woman, how pregnant?
And the thing that you have to remember is, one, not every trans person experiences dysphoria the same way. Two, we really need to separate biological sex from gender identity because they're not the same thing, and that's not a new concept. And three, if it's not hurting you personally, what somebody else does with their body is none of your fucking business. And by hurting you, I mean physically threatening you or your rights. And Seahorse Dads don't do that. I know a lot of trans people are confused by Seahorse Dads because they don't understand how a trans man could not be dysphoric over this. And for a long time, I was one of those people. But the fact is, not everyone experiences dysphoria the same way. Maybe he's not dysphoric by it because, to him, it's just a function his body can do. He doesn't consider it something that's indicative of womanhood. Or maybe the desire to have a biological child of his own outweighs the dysphoria that he could potentially experience from being pregnant and giving birth. The point is, his experience isn't the same as yours. Or maybe they're confused because they think pregnancy and childbirth is a sign of womanhood. But this function that a trans man's body has isn't the be-all end-all of womanhood. It's not the only thing that could potentially indicate a woman. So when a trans man gives birth, it's not some gotcha that he's actually a woman. I really just wish that society could separate the idea of sex and gender altogether. Trans people have been around for centuries, and every culture, for the most part, has representation of that. That's actually a series that I want to do. I want to dig into the history of trans people and how different cultures handle it and that type of thing, because it's really interesting to me, and I just want to hammer home this point that trans people aren't new. They're not going anywhere. We're not some new fad. We're not the latest thing in the news. We're not some new political ploy by the Democrats. We've always been here. The point is, it costs people literally $0 to realize that gender and sex are not the same thing. Besides that, what the fuck does it matter what somebody else is doing if it's not physically hurting you or yours, or encroaching on your constitutional right to exist? Last I checked, trans people in the US still have a constitutional right to the pursuit of happiness. Just let us live. I had originally wanted to do this video a year or two ago when Seahorse Dads first hit the news because, oh boy, there was a lot of ignorance that surrounded the topic. Anytime an article about Thomas Beatty, who you may recognize as the first trans man to get pregnant, came across my newsfeed, I had to physically fight myself not to look at the comments because they were always incredibly toxic. And as anybody who cares about social justice can tell you, not reading the comments is self-care. Initially, the thing that first brought Beatty intense media attention was a first-person article that he wrote for the national LGBTQ magazine, The Advocate, talking about trans issues. The article featured a picture of him shirtless and pregnant. This picture may have been one of the first introductions of the idea of male pregnancy to a lot of people. He later did an interview on Oprah talking about his right to bear a child regardless of his gender identity. in this interview, he said it's not a male or female desire to have a child, it's a human one. He went on to say that as a person, it's his right to have his own biological child. Which is true. If somebody wants a child of their own, and the easiest avenue is for them to bear the child themselves, and they have the desire, why shouldn't they just bear the child themselves? I appreciate BD for bringing the issue of pregnant men into the light and putting some focus on trans masculine issues. I, however, didn't like that he was paraded as the first pregnant man, because that's just not true. Trans men have been pregnant and given birth before. He's just the first one to get media attention. But that's neither here nor there. I just think it's important for people to realize that if a trans man wants children, has the ability and desire to bear his own children, then he is well within the right to make the choice over his own body to have a child. It's crazy how many trans issues can be covered by the blanket statement of, if it doesn't physically hurt you or hurt your right to exist, then don't worry about it. But then at the end of the day, conservatives think that equal rights encroach on their rights, so you know what, y'all? Who knows? And I actually have a few announcements for this week. The first is that I intend to do a Q&A video. So if you have any questions for me about my transition or trans issues in general or LGBTQ issues, you can find my curious cat to ask me these questions in the description below. The second thing is just a small reminder that I run a trans Discord server called the Transcontinental Gender Alliance. There's also a link to that in the description below. And finally, I wanted to let you guys know that there will not be a video on December 26th. I will be taking that week off to celebrate Christmas and just kind of take a break from making videos and like editing and all that. But I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!